1st, 2024. It was early morning in a peaceful village on the outskirts of Bengaluru, and the people of Hilalaga were still asleep. No one expected that just a few hours later, the entire city would be shaken by a gruesome scene unprecedented in the history of local crime. At around 2 a.m. at the Chandapura police station, a middle-aged man suddenly walked in holding a bloody cloth bag. His face was calm to the point of being frightening. He said, "I have come to surrender. This is my wife's head." When the police opened the bag, a woman's head with hair still on, eyes closed, which had been severed not long ago, fell onto the cold tile floor. The news spread quickly along with gruesome images from the scene. The victim was a young wife murdered by the husband who had sworn to protect her for life. How did a family fall apart like this? Was it blind love, sick jealousy, or something deeper? Let's follow the details of this tragedy right here. Manasa, 26, is a young woman living in Hilalaga village on the outskirts of Bengaluru. She is not outstanding in appearance, but is loved by many people around her for her gentleness, calmness, and sociability. Neighbors describe her as the type of woman who is hardworking, patient, and never argues loudly with anyone. Manasa used to work as a housewife and a small vendor at the local market, spending most of her time with her neighbors and her husband's family. In her personal life, she married Shankar a few years ago through a traditional matchmaking process, a marriage not born out of love, but Manasa always tried to nurture it. For her, her husband is the pillar, and she herself only wants a simple life, not seeking anything grand. Shankar, 28, Manasa's husband, is a quiet, sometimes gruff man. He works as a seasonal driver and porter, an erratic job that leaves Shankar in a state of constant mood swings. Many in the village say he doesn't like anyone to look at his wife for more than 3 seconds, is often jealous, and is extremely controlling. On the outside, Shankar appeared to be a reserved, hard-working man, but on the inside he was filled with suspicion and dissatisfaction. He forbade his wife from going out without permission, did not allow her to have her own phone, and constantly checked her messages. The feelings between the two were never passionate, but not completely cold either. What killed the marriage was the simmering jealousy that grew like a tumor. No one cared about it until it exploded. The marriage between Shankar and Manasa, which seemed to pass quietly like any other poor working-class couple, actually contained countless cracks. And those cracks grew deeper and deeper, not because of real infidelity, but because of the husband's blind jealousy. Shankar was a suspicious man. He often suspected that Manasa was having an affair with a man in the same village. Every time Manasa laughed and talked while going to the market, or when someone called her name at the end of the lane, Shankar would question her, break things, and even slap her many times right in the middle of the yard. Neighbors witnessed Manasa crying and having bruises on her face many times, but she always explained, "My husband is just hot-tempered. It's okay." She did not have her own phone. All calls had to go through her husband's number. One day, an old friend of Manasa's texted to say hello. Shankar flew into a rage, forced his wife to swear in the middle of the house, and threatened to kill her if she was found to be hiding contact with any man. Despite living in fear, Manasa did not leave Shankar. She once told her mother when she went back to her hometown, "If I divorce him, he will kill me." Manasa's family advised her to go back for a while to cool off, but she refused, fearing that she would lose face and hoping that her husband would change. No one knew that in Shankar's mind, a creepy plan was secretly forming. He began to follow his wife's every step, remember her every glance with other people, even imagine non-existent love affairs, as if he was living in a separate world of hallucinations and resentment. A resigned woman, a pathologically jealous husband, a small house where darkness creeps into every meal, every night, just waiting for a spark, and the crime will explode. And then, that fateful night came. Night of February 29th, 2024. The atmosphere of Hilalaga village was as silent as any other night. Oil lamps flickered in the adobe houses. The sound of dogs barking echoed in the distance. In the small house of Shankar and Manasa, there were no quarrels, no unusual sounds. There was only silence. Deadly. Shankar sat alone in the courtyard, staring into the darkness. He had just returned from the iron shop, where he had bought a sharp sickle knife under the pretext of cutting cow grass. But his thoughts were not of pasture, but of a neck, the neck of his wife whom he believed had betrayed him. It was almost 1 a.m., and Manasa was fast asleep. She lay on her side, her face peaceful on the mat on the floor. No one, not even she, could have imagined that the man lying beside her would be the one to end her life in a few minutes. Shankar went into the kitchen, took out the sickle knife still wrapped in paper. He came back in, eyes unblinking. He knelt beside the bed, and without hesitation, swung the knife. The first slash tore through the night. There was no scream, just a short, choking sound. Manasa woke up in an instant, but it was too late. One slash, then two. Blood sprayed the floor. He beheaded his wife as if she were not his wife but his sworn enemy. When he was done, Shankar wrapped the head in a cloth, stuffed it in his pocket, wiped his hands, took the scooter keys, and went out as if he were going to work early. The scooter moved slowly through the morning mist, passing through the winding dirt roads. The bag swung under the footrest. Inside was Manasa's head. Around 2 a.m., he stopped his car in front of Chandapura police station, knocked on the door. When a policeman on duty opened the door, Shankar smiled strangely. "I killed my wife. Here is her head. I want to surrender." The police thought he was drunk, but when he opened the bag, everyone stood still. No one spoke. A marriage ended in blood. A cold head placed on the floor of the police station, and Bengaluru was shocked. 2:05 a.m., 1st of March 2024. The police on duty at Chandapura station still could not recover after opening the bloody cloth bag. Inside was the woman's head, eyes closed, long hair still stained with blood, face still showing the pain of her death. Shankar stood there eerily calm. No resistance, no tears, no remorse. "I killed her because she betrayed me," he said, his voice even. The police immediately handcuffed the suspect, detained him for questioning, and immediately alerted the patrol force near the village of Hilaliga. A small task force was dispatched that night, carrying flashlights, weapons, and medical supplies. When they arrived at the Shankar Manasa house around 3 a.m., the door was unlocked. In the small room, the dim light clearly showed a large pool of blood on the cement floor, spilling from the end of the mat. The smell of blood was strong. Manasa's headless body lay there, her arms cramped, her nightgown soaked in blood. The deep slash marks on her neck showed that the force was extremely strong. There was still an unfinished cup of tea on the table. The neighbors were awakened by the sound of a police siren. They rushed out to see, thinking there was a thief. But when they found out that the culprit was Shankar, the husband, everyone was shocked and shivered. "Last night I saw her sweeping the yard, but now there is only a headless body." A neighbor was stunned. "I used to suspect that he had mental problems, but I didn't think he would do such a terrible thing," an old man in the village said. After a thorough investigation, the police formally arrested Shankar under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code, murder. He remained expressionless, except for one sentence: "I did the right thing. A wife who betrays her does not deserve to live." The news was passed on to higher authorities. Newspapers, reporters, and local television stations rushed to the scene and the police station that very morning. The simple house where the incident took place became a crime scene. The police immediately sealed off the area, spreading tarps to block the view from the growing crowd of people and media. Forensic experts discovered many blood stains stretching from the sleeping mat to the back of the house. These traces showed that the victim had been dragged after being beheaded, possibly to prevent blood from spilling too quickly onto the front floor. A bloody sickle knife was found in the kitchen, under an overturned bucket. The murder weapon had been washed by the killer before leaving the house. A half-empty teacup, a bloody handkerchief, and slippers lying by the door all suggested that the crime had occurred very quickly, while the victim had no means of defending herself. Manasa's body was taken to the city morgue for an autopsy. The coroner's conclusions indicated cause of death, Acute blood loss due to a deep slash wound to the neck. Time of death, between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. Injuries, 3 consecutive slashes to the neck, one of which nearly severed the head with the first blow. There were no other bruises or signs of resistance on the body, confirming that the victim was asleep when attacked. In the interrogation room, Shankar did not appear panicked or remorseful. On the contrary, he answered calmly, clearly, and sometimes even smiled faintly. I warned her many times. I told her, if she betrays me, I will take her head. I followed her, and I am sure she is seeing someone else. When asked if he had any evidence, Shankar replied, I don't need evidence. My instincts have never been wrong. Investigators determined that Shankar was not drunk, nor was he in a moment of anger, but had prepared for the crime several days in advance. The purchase of the sickle, the confirmation of his wife's frequent visits, and especially his surrender and the evidence of the crime, all showed that he was completely sober when he committed the crime. After examining Manasa's phone, neighborhood cameras, and questioning acquaintances, police found no evidence that she had a lover. A friend of the victim said, Shankar was always suspicious. Even when I called Manasa to ask her to go to the market, she told me not to ring more than 3 times, otherwise he would question me until morning. This was a premeditated murder, not a spontaneous one. The motive for the crime was suspicion of adultery, but there was no concrete evidence that Manasa had an extramarital affair. The perpetrator acted alone, was sober, and showed signs of paranoid disorder of extreme jealousy. The police proposed to prosecute under Section 302 IPC, murder with the maximum penalty of death or life imprisonment. A cold confession. A murderer does not need evidence, just suspicion in his mind. And a wife died unjustly without a single chance of being cleared. Just 3 days after the case, Shankar was brought to the Anekal Magistrates Court under strict control. The media and press crowded the court gate. Although the initial trial was only for temporary detention, the brutality of the case attracted hundreds of people to watch. Shankar appeared in prison clothes, his hands still in handcuffs, his eyes cold. He did not look at anyone, did not say anything. When the judge asked, "Do you admit to the crime of killing your wife?" Shankar nodded. "I did not kill anyone. I only cleaned up the betrayal." The case was transferred to the Bengaluru Rural District Criminal Court, which handles serious crimes. Shankar's defense attorney, appointed by the state, tried to argue that his client was mentally disturbed, out of control, or highly agitated. However, psychiatrists determined that Shankar was sane and mentally competent. The prosecutor presented full evidence. The wound was caused by a sickle knife, extremely dangerous. The motive was clear, suspicion of adultery. The act of preparation in advance, buying a knife, attacking while the wife was sleeping. In particular, the act of bringing the victim's head to the police station to surrender is undeniable evidence of initiative, without losing his mind. Throughout the trial, Manasa's mother sat in the front row, her eyes red and speechless. She called and said she was scared. "I never expected the worst to happen," she told reporters, choking up. "She died unjustly. She never did anything wrong to her husband." The local women's association and organizations protecting victims of domestic violence also spoke out strongly, demanding the maximum sentence for Shankar. After more than 3 months of investigation, litigation, and trial, Shankar was sentenced to life imprisonment under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code, plus Section 201 for intentionally destroying evidence, cleaning the murder weapon, moving the body. The judge stated, "The accused's actions are extreme, barbaric, and contrary to all values of a civilized society. Murder cannot be justified by personal feelings, especially when there is no concrete evidence of the victim's guilt. Justice was served, but at the cost of an innocent life." And behind the verdict is a society that still doesn't fully understand the pathological control of love. Manasa, 26 years old, a gentle wife, a woman who lived up to her duty as a daughter-in-law, had to pay with her life just because she could not prove her innocence in her husband's eyes. She did not die of betrayal. She died of being suspected without the right to defend herself. She died in silence, the same way she had endured living with a husband who constantly monitored, questioned, threatened, and controlled her every breath. The case ended in a life sentence, but is there any justice that can save the souls who have been tormented by domestic violence and whose cries for help have gone unheard? Is there any law that can intervene when the victim still chooses to remain silent to preserve a home that has long since decayed? We cannot bring Manasa back, but we can speak up for the women who live in fear, isolated in their own homes. The place that should be the safest place. Love has no control. Marriage has no threat. Any relationship that makes you lose your freedom, your dignity, is not worth keeping. Learn to listen. Be alert when you see violence. And most importantly, teach men that love does not mean possession, because if not, there will be more Manasa.